Okay, and this is where we get to start a little fun. And we're gonna, in this section, we get to go into our triggered expression. So you're gonna be invited to join a small group, a breakout room. So there are gonna be 2 people per room. Person A and person B will take turns sharing their triggered moment. So person A is gonna choose a triggered moment in the last week, something with intensity 4 or less out of 10. Again, we don't have time to get into the really highly triggered ones. And the idea is that person A would go ahead and go into it and take on the feelings, metaphorically when you think the bullets are coming at you. And after the time is up, so I'm going to give you a message, a broadcast message that shows to switch time, to switch roles, and just notice how you're feeling in that moment. And during that, person B is going to be listening for evaluations for person A. So write down the evaluations in a pad of paper, and it's cool to make facial expressions or sounds to let them know that you're present. That's cool. And so you're just going to write down the evaluations that you're hearing. And go ahead and watch for the broadcast messages to switch roles. So if you happen to get stuck, feel free to ask for help by clicking on that support button, or you can just come back into the main room and we can talk then. So this is what it looks like. There's a focus stick. This is just like indicating that person A has the focus stick. So person A is going to summarize their triggered moment and then go into it, go into the full expression. And then person B is just silently listening for the evaluations. So at halftime, I'm going to send out a broadcast message. It's like green broadcast message on the top of your screen. And then person B gets to share their triggered moment and give their full expression. And then person A is listening for evaluations and writing them down. All right. So that's what we're going to do. I see that there's a couple of hands raised, and I'm assuming that I'm looking for questions on the process. Otherwise, I'd like you to have the experience, and then we'll come back and process it. Go ahead, James, and then Kiara.
It was just a quick question for where this 4 thing is. Is it, can you give an example maybe of what a 4 or less? Is it sort of like what Laura said about her husband not hugging her and she was like, oh, maybe he's mad at me?
Yeah. So like doing the dishes, I was annoyed because I saw dishes in the sink because, it's getting messy. So that might be a 2, right? At least it is for me, right? If my heart rate was like pounding and I have lots of strong emotion coming up, that could be higher for me, right? So your body sensations, like the tension that you feel in your body, is a helpful indicator of the intensity that you might be feeling. Does that answer your question, James? So if my heart is pumping really hard and I want to go kick their ass, then that's greater than 4. So we don't want to do those here in this workshop. Kiara, do you have a question about the process that we're about to go do?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's possible for you to put these instructions in the chat room while we are in the breakout rooms. I feel that sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, I took a screenshot, but sometimes I feel, while doing this exercise, that we forget, what's the exercise.
Yeah. So are you doing that for yourself, or are you wanting to contribute to other participants in the room?
Well, I took the screenshot because I've experienced that happens to me, and I'm happy, to put it in the chat. I don't know if when we're in breakout rooms.
Yeah, go ahead and if you could put it in the chat right now, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll give people time to download it.
Okay.
Because it's very helpful. And thanks for bringing that up.
All right, should be coming in now.
All right, so thanks, Kiara, for putting in the screenshot, and you can download that. All right, so essentially, it's pretty easy. I'm gonna just verbally say it. Go ahead, Jamie, you have a question about the process of what we're doing?
Yes, I'm feeling concerned that I'm going to have this intimate, vulnerable sharing moment with a partner, and then we're not going to have a moment to connect because I assume we're coming back to the main room. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be a later opportunity to have a discussion with the person or not.
With the same person?
Same person.
Yeah, how about I'm going to go ahead and add like a couple minutes at the end of the breakout room to allow for that. How's that?
That's lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. So, so I will give you timing. Please pay attention to the broadcast messages, and let's go off and have an experience. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the breakout rooms. All right. So is someone in room 1 right now?
Yeah, that was the room that I made for myself.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and recreate some rooms for all the participants. All right. Allow, automatically move all assigned. Okay, cool. I think we can do this now.
So James, we're not telling people our evaluations, we're just writing them down.
You can share them at the end.
Okay.
You will have that couple minutes to talk about it. So let's see, 23. So let's create 23 rooms. All right, so I'm wanting to pre-assign everyone to 23. Welcome back, everyone. Hoping that that was helpful to express your challenging triggered moment with another human being, and that you had a couple minutes to debrief. I would like to go to the next section before we debrief as a group, unless there's a super strong reason. So we just had the opportunity to share our triggers, our stories. And I'm seeing a hand. Laura, is this a is it possible for you to hold your question till later, or are you just wanting to be heard? And so just putting words, so trigger is this unexpected stimulus from the outside, and you have access to the story that you associated with the trigger. And then the other use of the word trigger is being in a triggered state, some kind of unconscious survival reaction to that stimulus. And usually we go into fight, flight, freeze, or appease are the four common responses. And this is a picture that I got from Sarah Payton. And this sequence was inspired by her work. So something happens and we have this trigger that looks like a bullet. You know, we have this trigger bullet coming at us. And we have this story associated with the trigger. And then we have this reaction, which we got to experience right now in our dyads. So what I'd like to do now is to focus on that story that we made up about the trigger. And so we're going to talk about the evaluations and judgments that we're making. So as a group, so back together again, I'd like for each one of you to consider the story that you made up about what happened. So what's the story? So I'm going to give you about a minute to write it down. And so what's the story that you made up about what happened? You have a minute to write that down. All right, that's been about a minute. Raise your hand if you're having a hard time identifying your story. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move on.
Could I ask that the story we are talking about the person's story that we listened to, correct? Or are we talking about our story?
The invitation is that you talk about your own story.
Your own story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that that clarification. So you're interested in your own story that you made up about what happened earlier. All right. So what I'd like you to do now is to summarize your story with one judgment. So take, there's maybe a paragraph in there. And I'd like you to come up with one sentence that describes your judgment. For example, they're totally insensitive and uneducated might be a story that I made up. Or maybe, about my manager, he doesn't care about me right now. So he doesn't care. He doesn't care is the judgment. So I'm going to give you about a minute to create one sentence that summarizes the main judgment that you're making about your story. Like it might be, he doesn't care, or they're a slob, or they're selfish, whatever it might be. Just come up with a short judgment that summarizes your story. Got about 30 more seconds. And sometimes it's hard to come up with the judgment if you're like totally in it. So if you're struggling in identifying your judgment, please raise your hand now, your digital hand, and I'll help you work through and identify that story, that judgment. Right, Veronica, do you, are you having a hard time identifying your judgment?
No, I don't have a hard time. I thought that you were asking like if we should share.
No, so for right now, yeah, so if you could hold the shares for later, because I want to have you, I'd like you to have an experience first.
Sure.
Okay, so assuming that everyone has their judgment, and I want you to play that judgment over and over in your mind. So he doesn't care. Like, for example, it might be, he doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about me. So I want you to repeat that over and over, and we're going to do that for about 30 seconds. So take that judgment and in your mind, repeat it over and over again. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about me. Whatever it might be. Just do that for yourself, and we'll check in about it. So that's about 30 seconds of repeating your judgment. Please raise your hand if you'd like to share how that was for you. How do you feel having shared your judgment over and over again? Veronica, how was it for you to repeat your judgment?
It made me very anxious and kind of like make me scream inside.
Yeah, so feeling anxious and you want to scream. Thanks, Veronica. Laura, how was it for you to repeat your judgment? You have to unmute yourself because I can't hear you. Please unmute yourself.
There. Nothing. That's interesting. That is what I do to myself every single moment
So
of
how did you
my
feel about it?
life. And I go to bed, and it still is awful. It's just painful. Is
painful.
Painful. Is anguish. Is my whole body feels tight.
Thank you, Laura.
My chest feels tight. I get in my chest. Oh yeah, I can go on and on.
Yeah. So hearing it's tight and anxious. Thank you, Laura. And hopefully we can find some relief later. Thank you. I see two more hands. Raf and then Melissa.
So I feel worried that when I see that person, I'm immediately gonna think about the judgment.
Thank you. So you feel worried that that it might come back to you. Thank you. Melissa, go ahead.
Maybe it's just this one case, but I oddly felt neutralized. Like repeating that over and over again is it was almost like an antidote to the poison. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. So maybe you felt some relief. It's repeating that over and over again. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah. Thanks, Melissa. So I see Monica and then Shara. How did you feel as you repeated your judgment over and over again?
It's alleviate my frustrations, but at the same time, am I gonna go in there? Is she gonna continue the way she is, or do I have to fire her?
So I'm hearing that you have some judgments continuing to play in there.
Well, I don't think it's a judgment, it's a fact.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Monica. And Kiara, and then how was it for you to repeat the judgment over and over again?
Well, and kind of on the heels of Monica, but I'll do that later. I felt like my chest tightening and my stomach also tightening, like, this tension built inside me. But it also made me doubt myself. It made me think, why am I always finding myself in this situation?
Okay. So it led to other curiosity.
Patterns. Yeah. It's like, Is it me? So yeah.
Thank you. So you notice a little tightness and it spurred other curiosities and thoughts. All right, thanks, Kiara. All right, I'd like to move on to the next part so that we can start to process our judgments.